actually, I was going to miss a flight back from Glenbrooks, and then had the debate not been a dropped planning flaw, that made it an instant decision, and I made my flight.
Nice.
Kathleen versus
Matt, you want this panel?
Yeah, let's do it, dude. I'm excited.
Everyone got it?
No, not yet.
Good? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Okay, everyone else?
Ideology is the root of power, thus whoever is in control of the ideology is in control of existing ethics tabble. Ideology becomes an increasingly important component of power, providing legitimacy and inner-coherent significance of phenomenon, or derives from the phenomenon, both from their locus of concept of ideological context. Reality is not shape theory, but rather the reverse power against certain ideologies, though ideology is appropriate power, though then it becomes a dictator itself also. Agency is intrinsically tied with ideology, as agency of your own ideology allows you to control your own world and thoughts as Furo. Agency is evil agency is enterprise with large jurisdiction, all enterprise fall under intentional transition, and out of particular enterprise might not count as motives within these enterprises, but there are still instances of intentional agency is locus, where we adjudicate the merits of the merits participating in ordinary enterprise. One cannot put this agency on hold, trying to determine whether agency is justified because that kind of practical reasoning is exclusive of intentional agency, and the oppressed must free themselves, the oppressed must regain their agency in order to be fully free for air. The oppressed in the world of oppression to practice commit themselves to a transformation. The first stage is the concentration, the first stage change in which the oppressed perceive the world of oppression must take into account their behavior, their view of the world, their ethics, a problem with the duality of the oppressed. They are not contradictory beings with the establishment of a relationship of oppression. Violence has already begun. The history of violence has been initiated by the oppressed in response to this. Position of violence, the oppressors and gesture love, accountability can be oppressed. Love is the oppressed who by freeing themselves can free their oppressors. Ladder on the oppressed class free them, neither the others nor themselves, therefore essential. The oppressed wages are the result of contradiction which they're taught. And advocacy text public colleges and universities in the United States ought not restrict any constitutionally protected hateful speech, and speech is a biopolitical act. The state is the origin of hateful speech. The existence of the context of hate lives within the ratification by the state. Regulating speech is to remove power from the citizen. Butler 97. The state produces hate speech categorized as the state's ratification power. The state traditional language to establish and maintain the domain of what is thought to be equal. The state produces the acceptable speech marking line between the domains of speak one and speak one's attributed hateful speech is modeled on the existence of the sovereign state understood as sovereign speech has sovereign powers distributed. The speech would be said to private rights and liberties. Power of legal language that which we refer to as a compound the state of regulation of offensive speech, and powerful speech is encoded in a history of hegemonic speech. Speech is only as powerful as those who spoke it first. Butler. Power is not functionally originating, but is also the derivative of form of the succeeded formulation to not be coded or whether it's the category of intentional this place, but from the place will be able to govern the entire space of the system. Utterance of form that succeeds as because intention successfully governs the action of speech only because that action represents a prior action that accumulates authority through repetition of authoritative practices. The speaker who utters racial slurs, not saying that sort of making linguistic community with history of speakers, and speaking in threat is a performative threat of power because it is a threat. The threat is not absolute. It is important to recognize the valuability of language divided. Butler 97. The threat and the act and are of course distinct. They are related to the kinds of threat states and pending servitude and other force coming out of the state. The subject not producing force coming out of his necessary effects. Self-defeating powers throw over the speech act as will fully materials and threat by speech. Such speech is vulnerable to failure, and this vulnerability must be exploited to counter the threat. And censorship shifts power to a new state. Censorship is a means of producing power by defining acceptable speech. Butler 97. Censorship is that which is directed against personal content. Censorship is a way of producing speech and training will become acceptable speech. It cannot be understood exclusively in terms of traditional power. Serves as censorship appears to follow the utterance of offensive speech code. Censorship precedes the text in some sense responsible for its production, and regulation steps far beyond the speech regulated, but exercises the power over the social realm of what is speakable. Butler. Censorship is a form of power. It's a form of act because censorship seeks to produce subject supporting the explicit influence norms of production. This subject having to do with other things with regulation. Speech the subject production takes place through regulation. Logical means equal discourse becomes subject means to be subjugated to a set of implicit explicit norms to govern that kind of speech will be legible for the speech of the subject. And biopolitical control is constantly shifting. Power can be moved around to best suit the state's will. Dealing Gear 2008. Biopolitics and biopower is a necessary ladder of freedom. One can be freedom, another should to work at it. There's biopolitics which is simultaneously also security apparatus. Biopolitics on itself a universal phenomenon as actualization instead of specific historical which are evolving economy and power relation. Biopolitical security practices not articulate design nature. Their contingent achievements reflecting the partial realization of design machines in nature. There is a different vision for which original drugs and concerns of biopolitics and no longer computation of biopolitical order of power relation has needed merely until to change your level of practice, and lack of bans allows power to shift back to the people. Voting affirmative is critique before action. We accept power is inevitable and potentially productive, but only powerful analysis of domination can change current discourse and act as a prerequisite to action. Blyberg, Richardson 2. Any form of government must be subjugated to analysis. Critique based on will not be dominated, nor cannot be given the universal grounding independent of those people and context, nor is the world grounding desirable shows trained in matters of historical human ideas. System of thought, what is good for man, given the historical experience of things that produce more suffering among humans and strong men, soon limiting visions is good. Explanation power is productive local rather than press higher, because suggests real opportunities for agency and change. We should abandon the whole tradition allows us to imagine knowledge can only exist where power relations are suspended. We should never have the power produce knowledge. Power produce knowledge directly imply one another. There's no power relation which is not correlated Constitution, the field of knowledge of the law, institutions provide no guarantee of freedom, equality, or democracy, nor is freedom likely to be achieved by imposing abstract or theoretical system or correcting in political aspects to criticize the working institutions, criticize them in a manner that will be political. Violence always exercise itself obscurely to themselves unmasked, so one can find them practices of freedom and not derived from universal or theories. Freedom as a practice, ideals, not utopian. Absence of power, your understanding of power works as the first prerequisite for action, because action is exercise of power and recapturing speech is possible, such as recapturing signifies a change in agency of the Speech Act. The ability to take speech back makes the attack of master of speech, giving them agency over the words used as weapons. Butler 97. Or redoubling the speech, say, place the legal active for speech as such abuse, or the mentioning of these very terms is crucial. The crucial and legal discourse paid speech tells or restating for the performance of speech, present context is appearance break with the past and the levels themselves legible only in terms of past from which is right the rub of the re-evaluation terms such as clear suggests that speech can be returned to a speech in a different form, changeable power, such speech remarks the kind of discursive performativity that is original chain signifies only the origin, remain unfixed, unfixable, that no speech act has the ability to perform injury in its effect, means that no simple elaboration of speech act will provide a center by which injured speech might be effectively adjudicated, opening up the possibility of agency where agency is not the restoration of sovereign autonomy in speech, but a replication of conventional notions of mastery and reappropriation of language taken under public deliberation has the ability to spill over and change the state. Butler, the task of reappropriation is taken up within the domain of protected discourse. The state signifies only its own law, and the re-signification constitutes an extension of its jurisdiction and discourse. Hate speech is production of the state to give the adjudicating hate speech is to give the state tasking me from misappropriation of the state returns the power to create and maintain certain forms of injurious speech of its own end on review. The task of the specific intellectual is to understand the study relations of power. Foucault, individuals encounters obstacles, face certain dangers, return anarchy seems late 19th century is possible because of failure to integration of current strategies. The role of specific intellectuals become more and more important proportion of the political responsibilities of the private or willy-nilly some intellectual serves the state or capital on the grounds of propagates a scientific ideology and bans recreate the language, giving it further power by codifying it in the text. Butler, recontextualizing law, prohibition, discourse, vocating for prohibition, and incitement, discourse, while this discourse proliferates as repeated enunciation, prohibitive law suggests its productive power depends on its break with the originating context, and injection of its relation is not with control of any given subject, and language shapes reality. Power. Gauman 2000. It when human beings had to communicate through law is something that would be no politics, properly speaking, only change in conflict because the human beings are communicating politics, rise from communicative emptiness of human faith, emerges such as soon as faith realizes communicability, and hence it has nothing to express. Nothing to express.
So you read everything?
Yeah, everything down from the word express and they gone into I can come cut it for you. That'd be easier.
Okay, no, it's fine.
Got it?
Yeah. Is everyone ready? Does the app defend implementation?
Do you want to?
Yes.
Sure.
So you will give me grants, or you will grant me links to dissent.
Sure.
Okay. So does the app garner offense from implementation? Seems like it doesn't.
Well, I would say that our solvency evidence under Butler is pretty clear, so it could garner offense, yes, from implementation.
Wait, no, this isn't like a. It could. Like, where does the affirmative garner offense? Is it from the consequences of the plan of the stance that your advocacy takes against biopower?
We'll take it from the implementation.
From the implementation.
Sure.
Okay. So I have a question about your advocacy.
Sure.
If my grandma is like, Danielle, I don't want you to touch anything on that, or I don't want you to touch any vase on that shelf,
Sure.
and I just touch one vase, did I satisfy her request?
Sure. I would say that any specific, it's not like any does not equal all, so I'm not going to grant you that T violation.
All right. So, wait, can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, so I will not grant you the T violation there. I think it's like contextualization is better. If you read a T interp that says that any equals all, that I must defend everything, then like I'll hit you with answers as to why contextualization is better.
Okay. So why is hate speech or allowing for hate speech specifically key to undermine biopolitical power?
Okay, sure. So that's the Butler evidence where we're talking about re-signification of words. So what Butler's talking about is how there's malleability in language or performative threats, specifically hate speech.
Wait, there's
Where
like 6
words and
Butler
hates-
cards in the app. Can you point me which one you're talking about?
Sure. So the one I'm talking about right now is it is the last one in the speech is biopolitical act. So that's saying that speaking is a threat of performative power, right? And then the next Butler card.
What is
indicates-
hate speech or
so
hateful speech?
Hateful speech is speech that is intended to like harm someone. Some language is intended like or discriminatory.
Okay, so how does giving an individual the ability to call someone a racial slur undermine biopower?
So specifically, my Butler evidence is pretty clear on this. Specifically, it talks about how we can re-signify speech acts. So speech does not directly imply hateful action, right? So that's the
Really?
valuability of the
So
language.
if
like
a person
causes.
calls the black word or calls a black person the N-word, that doesn't implicate any sort of power dynamic.
So it implicates power dynamic. Butler's argument is that the word does not directly imply action, which means there's a valuability between the language and the action. So Butler's saying we need to reappropriate words to take advantage of that
Okay, why is hate speech key?
So hate speech is specifically key. That's again the Butler evidence, which means that like hate speech can be reappropriated as a return to agency to the speaker. That's again discussing the valuability of language.
What would that mean to reappropriate hate speech?
So that means like Butler gives the example of the word queer, which has been taken in by the community as instead of a term of like discrimination, it's been taken in as a term of like adhere, like trying to think of the word.
Yeah, what's the
A
word
positive
you
term.
keep saying? You keep saying fallibility. What is it? What are you saying?
Yeah. So like the fallibility of language.
Fallibility. That's what. Okay.
That's how
I
Butler
just wanted to
characterizes
know.
it. Yeah.
Okay. 5 minutes?
Four.
I thought it was 4.
I've been taking 5.
I've been
That's
taking
what it was
4.
at the round robin.
Yeah, it was 5 year round robin. I've been taking 4
I think
this
it's
tournament.
4.
What if you two could agree and resolve?
5?
Yeah, I don't care.
Or 3.
What's the word in the last Butler evidence in the interview?
So the last Butler evidence.
Yeah.
Right, so that's saying that by like banning certain types of language, you give it further power by codifying it as hateful or inherently harmful in text.
Yeah, what's the warrant?
So the warrant is because like that comes from another piece of Butler evidence where the state is the origin of hateful speech by marking a line between what is speakable, what is unspeakable. So by codifying it in text, saying this is hateful speech, we give speech power.
Okay, stop. Read it. Okay, the order is going to be 4 off case.
Okay, I'm ready to do it.
Is everyone ready? Everyone good? Interpretation. Any is defined as every Merriam-Webster, every use to indicate one selected without restriction violation of plan, and restrictions throughout a specific forms of speech, hate, and that is hateful speech that benefits one is limits a long plan. Plan also around specified kinds of speech, justifies a limitless number of acts that be types of speech, i.e., hate speech, specific words of speech, to specified time and places. The list goes on and on. 3 impacts the 8 point is fairness. Lisa then has a limitless number of acts and repeated hate sense to, which results in a shuffling from the same generic speech for every day. Like the politics DA and the process CPP is education, shallow engagement. Means that we never actually learn about the topic in depth. It results in most of it being about tea or generic training, not about the average destroys education. The C point is limits are an independent word key to actually living life and developing key legal skills. Harris 13. Topicality is remarking with the law matters, religion choices, matters in contracts, leases, and many aspects of our life. Limits to be has a real amount of consequences. Together, strategy for this, and around any argument about a world where an independent purposes the community doesn't turn out what their purposes sound like, or do all school people who take it that we need to make it so people don't get to talk about anything they want to construct a world which makes debate and neighbor limits are real and not because I feel they're impacted by everyday existence. And two is common usage. CS proves our interpretation is more to favor for your grandma told you not to touch any of her antiques and you touch one of her favorite bosses you would not have obeyed her instruction. Common usage which the internal predictability and out of our preparation specific direction debaters go in our research also briefly interpretation is based on a fringe reading of the topic. And three is public version of the app removes restrictions surrounding all forms of constitution protected speech laws and 100% of your authentics have ensured that we can still discuss the app and allows us to have the right to access limit a link to our generics. This also brings our argument your advocacy is only essential the way that you garner offensive is solely designed to link from negative arguments. Your app literally would have been better had it just restricted all forms of had unrestricted all types of free speech because it would have allowed you to make your argument even more stronger about shifting power back to the people. And fairness is a better debate. It's a competitive activity and both sides need to equal access to valid education is better. The reason why schools fund the debate and drop the debate reason why dropping arguments and equivalent seconds to allow shifting different positions. The way I wish to be 7 minutes of policy opposite to your value. Dropping argument collapse to drop the debate on two because they have no advocacy does not make up for three first future business experience and debate is competitive successive based on positions if they can't win on the menu. Can you speak interpretations because one reason for is arbitrary which invites children to read about the full partial to the meaning interpretations different future reason reading consistent of the debaters can be held to in the future three stability cost and raise the bottom of the strategy as use if possible still remain reasonable which increases the before reasonability cost and speaking interpretations because you still need to read a calendar to prove that you're being reasonable. Skip that critique. I'll go to the counter. Counterclaim tax public knowledge is the university of ban the usage of hate speech McConnell 12 speech non-specific directed against individuals that are possibly being identified as because of free speech of screening to touch people for their identities when the hate speech of the fundamental balance argument British restrictions of speech criticism society where citizens feel free to express themselves but also free from violence. There certainly should be dialogue about oppression and someone has a prejudice even if prejudice can be engaged but there's a need to protect people from having violence perpetrated against someone calls a black person the N-word she's not expressing a new idea or outlining valuable thought they are committing an act of speech can serve to marginalize people alongside which hate speech seek to prevent violence when freedom to speak or mind impinges on someone's freedom again not seen and regulated cannot respect we cannot create a responsibility environment students feel that their administration media violence and first revolution against hate speech are necessary when the student body and hate speech poses a direct threat to the oppressed family that is necessary to promote inclusiveness. Taylor summarizes well control. Inclusiveness is something our society is committed to when we make up a hate speech bill for that said Muslims have no blacks and Arabic is all very well for professors of white people say that this is the person paid for free expression but we imagine that it wouldn't be like for the person who has to defend his constitutional sense of security and this means that we all inhibitors of public inhabitants of public students it was a precious law that should require that everyone can maintain hate speech hate speech creates an environment that is environmental threat to social peace. Next off Corporate against hate speech are working on a campus harassment is increasing nationally now slightly 16 a report from the BBC concept in educational institutions has dropped 34% of decreases in bullying, harassment, and violent crimes and unrestricted free speech perpetuates hate speech and invites violence. Arthur 12. Hate speech is expression of discrimination. It's counterproductive not to criminalize it. Society that loves hate speech will punish and invite violence. We should never pretend that it does not occupy space in the marketplace by challenging hate speech through debate is non-government have a duty to protect its speech by criminalizing hate speech. Skip the next part. And hate speech is huge represented increasing crimes against the marginalized groups. Read back 15. Beta rhetoric and words and patches of the prospect period of hate so we can talk on another becoming more threatening since it marks the foundation for active righteous religion. Social dehumanization, discrimination, supports biases, motivated include the hate crimes and left on chunky, hate is justified by prejudice, discrimination, and evil hate, crimes and violence, and that turns case because you're the entirety of the app overlooks the way that hate speech actually causes real violence to minorities and states, that they do not have the agency in order to fight back against the state of all this that's allowing it to increase violence for minorities, and also means that there's no power shift ever occurs. In fact, that would be the people who are primarily affected by hate speech are just pushed up further down the social ladder and frame the debate on our discussion should be based around the changes in the empirical world that give your values and change capable conditions of repression. Curry 14 strikes down from the debate as a taking from the role of concepts of using racism and race becoming out of here language sees material realities as the concept one ideal theory over the other. They have to do one which is action what's the will have to say problem such problems they include cover anti-ethics and prevent that complexity of the actual sort of represented by theories of leaders but any real discussion about the congregation prejudice they say our orientation changes and our value orientation theoretical doesn't make us aware of problems that are within all committed to do acts and next off. The AC space and deliberations of the wired and white privilege system is grounded on the paper to deliver acting and reinforce social hierarchies that affect the races that are wrong. In most social realities result in violence against minorities, Delgado, and United for Defenders of the First Amendment argue that minorities should not be the rest of the subversive opposed hate speech rules because they believe that minorities will be able to educate this community, even more than those that are in power believe themselves able to because things so by showing that they bravely offer people to those who are harmful to those who because they feel empowered to do their job because we are power when you represents to challenge that power, that action it seems to call for a forceful response for telling you kindness so hardly and that you see the calm doesn't begin this fashion racist speeches may not say that to be correct by discussion idea that harm that speech is not correspond reality force minorities to represent treats hateful attempts to us an invitation for some of those a couple independent ones one case the first of this free evidence that says that the oppressed must unoppress themselves by themselves. This completely ignores the way that power relations works. It's not just about speech, but rather about the way the power dynamics works. Just giving them speeches and which allow them to unoppress themselves. This is the actual approach that highlighted in this way. The second is the Dylan argument uses the sense of biocontrol constantly shifts. However, no, your solution to this issue is just like give them free speech and then they will no longer be oppressed by biopolitical structures. However, that obviously ignores a lot of institutional rigidities which prevent them from being able to shift back power from the government. The third is the advocacy. Obviously, allowing for just unfettered free speech would make their argument stronger, but the specificity of your argument to just allowing hate speech is completely a sense of white privilege because it completely ignores the real violence which minorities are faced to when they have when they are faced with hate speech, and the alternative is to reinterpret the First Amendment summary concerned with the protecting material values that minorities participate in deliberations which abstract and embrace the real issue equalize and pride minorities like Suda and future practices that have been discovered in the First Amendment whether they be the conclusions being we pass that free speech academic or lecture to be reported by leftists to reach out people of color who win this one because their voices are set to embrace new orthodoxy.
Okay.
Orthodoxy.
Will you cut what you didn't read?
Yeah.
And then, where's the curry card in that doc?
It's actually right there.
Oh.
Okay, that's crazy. Just play this one. This one, and I didn't read the Zhou loss evidence needed that.
Okay. Cool. Ready?
Yeah.
What's the link to the K?
So, there's a couple links. The first would be this idea of hate speech as a non-violent action to minorities, and rather like just words, as you said. So Luevano and Yoon evidence sort of criticizes this idea that counter speech is an effective way of combating
Wait, counter speech
racism.
is effective?
What?
Counter speech is effective?
No, so Delgado and Yoon criticizes this sort of conception that counter speech is effective and doesn't actually pose real violence towards minorities. The second link is a link to the free air. So the explanation for that is that it sort of overlooks power dynamics that are present during instances of hateful speech. The second link is the free air evidence that you read in framing, which also sort of relies on this notion of like the oppressed people must free themselves.
Okay.
So
chill.
it
Let's talk about the
ignores sort of
disadvantage.
institutions.
So
What?
the stun evidence indicates that current protections against hate speech are working. If that's so, why is violence increasing?
That's obviously like they are working. That doesn't mean that like hate speech is like completely gone because there are also campuses that don't have hate speech protections.
Okay, chill. Let's talk about the curry card. So what's the warrant?
Sure. So the warrant is that often when debaters discuss solutions to things like racism, it's fixed on this paradigm of ideal theory, but ideal theory often ignores the material realities that affect those who are oppressed from being able to access the solutions that we discuss. That's why being hypervigilant and noticing how our policies are going to affect, again, these material conditions is key to actually creating solutions.
Okay, what's the impact to the disad?
A genocidal increase in crimes against marginalized groups.
Okay, chill.
And then I also make a separate terms based argument if you're
Okay, do
interested.
you read the ADL 13 card?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, chill. Let's move on to the counterclaim then. The McConnell evidence, is that like empirical solvency?
What do you mean?
Like for the counterclaim?
What do you mean by empirical solvency? Like this
That's the
isn't
solvency advocate for the counterclaim, right?
Oh yes. It's a solvency advocate for the counterclaim, but I don't know what you mean by is it empirical
So
solvency.
like, what's the warrant then?
Oh, sure. warrant explains, well, I mean, it's advocating that a ban on free speech is necessary because sort of a similar argument, like when we don't ban free speech, we sort of ignore the direct harm that it poses towards minorities, which inhibits their ability to engage in any sort of other action.
Okay, shelf, I'll start prep.
Starting 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, 323 is I'm sending out the doc. Okay, I just sent the doc. The order's going to be T, framing, and the framing will have implications to the counterfeit dissent. And then counterfeit dissent.
So not the app, just framing.
Yeah, framing will include, well, let's do it this way. T, framing is an extension of app framework. And then we'll go on to app solvency, and that can float on the dissent and counterfeit as well.
So T case counterfeit
like he's gonna go in the order of counter-interpretation.
Counter-interpretation, the affirmative on the Jan Feb 2017 topic may specify one form of protected speech if done if they can demonstrate there's sufficient amount of topic literature on the related to the issue when googling the term counter-span speech, such as the topic contents are displayed on the first page, or which hours you the issue for hate speech ends in the title. Additionally, beyond that, remaining 6, 3 cover hate speech among the issues in the article. The remaining 3 are general topic overviews, meaning that even without including the term hate speech, within 70% of the hits included in the content about speech and standards. One topic literature, the majority of topic literature on this topic centers on specific issues that's empirically verified by authors on this topic. Don't speak in general, further speaking context of specific bans like speech journalism, harassment, forcing you have to defend the full resolution, the same forcing you have to defend the universal implications of protected speech. The literature essentially doesn't exist. Specifics are key to role in education, particularly in relation to this topic, because the majority of topic literature grounded in specific specificity controls the internal link to education. Additionally, the real world is sweeping and protected speech would never happen. We need to talk about specific instances because the real world only policy happens. Such journalism or hate speech regulations. Additionally, voters' education is a priority. Fairness. Doesn't matter in a world where at the end of the day, education is all you walk away with straight. What makes me educate large quantities of students, higher quality skills, the ability to make decisions, arguments, discussion, orientation, debates, key skills, decision making, trends, and the boundaries between categories like policy education, topical education, that any critical decision making offer skills by role of decision making, comparative leader, that they spend when against them and we're actively having debates about fairness for years, but people are still leaving the activity of it because of it proves education law that matters on their shelf first. On their definition of any preferred definition in the context of field, protected speech is a key term in the resolution because protected speech places constraints on the word any. Cut the card there. SCOTUS ruled that any is a specific prefer because its context didn't tell. When I say the word any is likely to mean anything in the universe, any will have a limitation on the context, and more context helps to interpret language to import decision. Hint on the meaning of any prior word decision for the majority any person convicted of court or crime comes from imprisonment. Exceeding a reader for possessing any firearm, any court was not meant to encompass the foreign courts or domestic ones. That means that you don't weigh in your argument, and you can cut the card there. That means you don't weigh in your other arguments about why it's like common sense because common sense literally doesn't matter when we're discussing a legal topic. Additionally, to use an RBI because RBI say that the 1 AR times 2 doesn't allow me to go for both theory and substance. 1 AR means the theory becomes a non-reciprocal issue at the point where they have multiple warrants for depend on predicts speak along the multiple standards. 40-second per hour would have to time left to address case positions and what they read deters reading the show in the future to keep on losing on it. No one likes to lose, especially in circuit debaters, validity, educational benefit coming up front. So let's do the detail. I'm engaging in issues that are reports of education, debate, and grammar analysis. My winning straight card. You vote on the RBI because it will not be my efforts to this way. We're entirely pointless in the context of education. Additionally, on their shell,
Go back to the limit standards first.
topic education controls the internal link to limits because the majority of literature in the app literature narrows the specific issues impossible for me to defend any indefinite any topic education is a priority fairness. People never quit debating doing games of fair. If we're concerned about fairness, we'd stop spreading, making it, make everything open source and let every school have as many coaches and then add the next. At the end of the day, we're all very guaranteed to walk away with this oppression. Additionally, turn forcing the app to defend indefinite any means I can read an app with 4 advantages, each focusing on a different protected speech cut in that ground because they don't have the ability to engage in many issues. That can read this also acts as non-unique limits there. People can still speculate depending on issues of laws that would just be within each advantage. Additionally, all the arguments are saying that there's too many apps to predict, but the disclosure solves this app has been disclosed for 4 days, and we were at the round robin together. You could have just looked at it. Additionally, you have this answer specifically answered. There's no reason you can't engage about substance. Additionally, you say that it's unpredictable. Again, disclosure solves. Additionally, you say the T version of the app solves. This doesn't matter if I prove it being topical, which I do in my analysis on the evidence of any. Additionally, crossplay the non-unique arguments. People can still spec in the full resolution there. There's a topical version of this app without making it an advantage. That proves that
It's not unique. Go on to framing first.
She's conceded key issues in this around. The only argument she even puts on framework is Curry, which says we have to focus on materiality. She says that free air is abstract and free air is not abstract. It specifically talks about how political reality implicates the people who are on top will hand down gifts to the oppressed, which means that the oppressed can never regain their agency because they will inevitably remain at the oppressed because the powerful will stay in power. That's a real examination, which means I repeat the role of the ballot better, which is the reason for me on substance. Additionally, the counterplan debate, the whole app is a disadvantage to this. That's other evidence. Specifically, you have to exploit the flaws in language where language doesn't actually mean that anything's going to happen. So we can use that for appropriate terms. Cross-apply on all arguments on that. The empirical terms such as queer proof. Additionally, the app resolves the disadvantage so far. She conceded AC solvency. The Butler says we can reappropriate words. That means that hateful speech no longer exists, which means that we co-opt that. Additionally, language shapes reality and power. That's another reason why I'm engaging better with Will about for reasons of firm. It says races won't change. We take their power away by changing their speech.
We don't read.
Yeah.
We didn't read.
Sure.
to be T, then overview on the critique, case.
Will there be references to the arguments that were made against the DA and the CP?
On the critique.
Fair, I suppose. I just want to know where I should flow those. What's the other side?
T, overview on the critique. Alright, is everyone ready? On topicality, RPIs are bad. The first argument is logic. A is infinite regress. R is necessarily reverse RPIs acted in such a model to fit as possible to choose P and kills with probability B. It's a nice chaos antecedent. Proving your fair educational to provide a proactive use of a down to challenge their revolution C for your position in the first place. C is fairness in education or pure reverse. You should win for being a fair educational lab as a model to be wouldn't grant all of the majority of the position. And logic is a side to change all theory standards in the logical argument doesn't give a reason to establish the conclusion of some of its premises are 2 and 2. Kills normally A kills theory. Definitively has to change theory and some legitimate versus evolution RBI and B is incentivized to abuse RBIs encouraged to be distributed abusive strategy to be used to the people to get this 15 minutes initiative of this series specific because the person leading the decision can focus on front line of a single argument C so RBIs prevent me from deceiving how much is right. If I realize that it to be the better and the original interpret normally turns all the theoretical flaws even if you when your counter can let me internalize whether to be completely absent theories norming effect. 3 is education A substance counter RBIs because it's your knowledge of where theories distributes will never return substance because theory is a voting issue for both debaters substance education at least theory based on hyper-technical skill that only matters when based on education is the formal skill that lasts long after the round. The rebuttal efficiency RPIs only allow for lazy rebuttals which is where debaters go all in all theory or every year the argue and round RPIs forces debaters to make strategic decisions to better allocate their time to the extent so these still can extend subject matter offensive rebuttal efficiency controls the interlink that should exist the amount of substantive engagement debaters have time for and off their arguments. You say you should get an argument because the times you listen the times you literally still an argument that or times you justifies infinite abuse because it means that the argument means that the one of your or the affirmative group gets to do anything abusive like read like an uncontestable affect or just because of times Q which is something out of control. The second argument is that times Q is not a reason that I should lose for this argument because the 1AR was totally manageable. The issue was your time allocation which means that I should be punished for the punishment for this argument. The second argument you go for is that hers are reading this shell. However, there's no argument. There's no evidence for this argument. Also, no reason for why. Having why you winning theory and the argument going away wouldn't be sufficient in the first place. You say that it validates the education importance of if you vote on the RBI. However, so would winning the argument because it means that T is no longer a valid issue. Also, all of our education arguments answers both the deters between the shell and the second and the third justification you go for reading the RBI because it proves that we never know the education value of your position, which if you just spend the entirety of the time on T and we never get back to the substance debate, we don't know the educational value of the affirmative, for example, because you just spent all of your time in the 1AR answering the shell, which means that again not an issue with me, just a time allocation, which means that we don't actually get this, and there's also no reason why this also wouldn't be true if theory or if winning the shell, which is the reason that it goes away as opposed to moving around. Okay, on the critique. The critique was entirely conceded. It's a great problem for you because I even identified specific links and the critique turns and solves keys. The first argument is the link argument. It says that the AZ statement deliberation is viewed is admired in white privilege. You completely overlook the sort of institutional rigidities that would prevent people from engaging in hateful speech. The modern evidence talks about how hate speech isn't just an example of words and it isn't driven by ignorance or necessarily just a devil or a person playing devil's advocate, but rather there's a power dynamic in when hate speech is employed and hate speech is used to reinforce that power dynamic and even invoke and have minorities risk real violence, which answers the entirety of the affirmative, which is just that hate speech is just words. No, hate speech is not just words. Hate speech has denotative capability to incite violence, which is the reason for why you look to critique. The second link that we will go for is the identification of the free air evidence or argument is that your methodology is that the oppressed must free themselves through hate speech or through repurposing hate speech completely overlooks these sort of institutional rigidities that would not allow the people who are oppressed to just close themselves up when they have access to hate speech. The second link that we will go for, or the third link allowing for free speech would allow for all types of control being allowed back into the sort of your focus on allowing specifically for hate speech completely overlooks the hate speech propensity to incite violence against minorities, which means that it's a view white and white privilege because it doesn't account for the sort of violence that is going to be occurring in that term's case, because inciting violence towards minorities isn't going to allow them to be able to sort of take back violence political control, because the people who are oppressed can't reclaim typically even words of those who are words are just being used to propagate violence against them. The alternative is to sort of in the alternative soul's case, because by recognizing this, we can actually fight back against the violence in the first place, which means that any risk of a link is sufficient to just do the alternative. You also do not make a permutation, but the links would be decided to the permutation in the first place. The alternative is to reinterpret the First Amendment as a right concerned with protecting the material ability of minorities participating in participation. This is propagated also by our Curry evidence, which explains that we need to focus on material realities to ensure that our policies actually hurt those who are oppressed. Off of your counterplan arguments, just in case you extend these against the critique in the 2AR, you say that the entirety of the opposite dissent to this. You don't actually articulate how the dissent would answer this. You can extend our Waldron evidence. This means that hate speech is sort of inherently intertwined with the sort of power dynamic, which means that you cannot separate the speech from that dynamic, which means that all it does is just allow for violence to occur. You look, the Waldron evidence is completely conceded, so you should prefer this on shrink the link. You don't allow new analysis in the 2AR. You say that the absolves dissent because we can reappropriate. However, no, the critique proves that you can't just reappropriate speech like that, and that is a very white privilege view that ignores the sort of material realities that hate speech occurs. You say that hate speech are yeah, that's actually sufficient. Go to the critique.
Okay.
I've used 3.3.
130.
Let's use 3.3. Yeah, so I'll finish. Order is going to be T, and then the extension of framing arguments is going to be in the AR. The order of T is going to be RBI, and then non-interp.
You're missing a bit.
Yeah.
Is a stupid observation. So I'm just trying to prove I'm not stealing crap. That's fair.
No.
So RBIs, my shell, and then framing. Everyone ready?
First, you make this argument that creates a regress and a reverse RBI that makes it irresolvable. Reverse RBIs do not exist, so there's no impact of that argument. Additionally, there's no war. Reverse RBI would just be winning the T shell anyway. Additionally, you say there's no reason for to win for being fair, but RBIs are intended to check back for rectifying abuse. Find proof that there's been abuse in this round and I'm topical. Then you have to go to the RBI because there has to be a way for the after to achieve the ballot. Additionally, you say that you say that fairness and education are a priori. These are the voters of the T shells. So there's a reason to negate for being more educational. Additionally, you say the logic is better, but wrong. It's a technical issue. Logic is not a debate anymore. That's why people read things like stupid Baudrillard. Additionally, you say there's a risk to lose to an RBI. That means that there's less substance, but this outweighed by the F not being able to win the ballot and all. Additionally, you say an increase in you say that people will increase abuse so they can win on RBI. No, I gave you links you could go for substance, but you chose not to. You can see that argument on the last speech. Additionally, you said that it prevents you from conceding the counter-interp in your next speech. Then don't be abusive and go for a counter-interp. I give you the links you want. Additionally, norm should include the possibility of an F ballot. Additionally, you say you know how we're never able to return the substance we have anyway. You do anyway. Additionally, I give you access to what you want, so there's no offensive reason to vote for that argument. Additionally, you saw that say causes lazy rebels aren't lazy. There's just nothing else I can go for. Now we'll go to the responses you made on my RBIs first. You say that's not a reason to lose because I just missed time allocated, but I was baited into doing this because T is a no because the T becomes a no risk issue. Then you can just invest all your time, and then there's the NR. There's no way for me to cover it well enough, which means you'll probably win the debate anyway. Additionally, you say the winning T would have been just as good, but I have to invest in places in other parts of the flow just in case you go for these arguments anyway. So go to the extend the arguments that I made on RBI first. Extend the arguments on the time scheme, specifically the RBIs don't allow the 1AR to go for both theory and substance, which means the theory becomes a non-reciprocal issue at the point where they have multiple warrants for why to defend all the protected speech, along with multiple standards, which are 40 seconds per RBI and have no time left to address the decision to read it. Additionally, deters reading the shell in the future. Additionally, it validates the educational benefit of coming off our Tom's response to the T shell. I am engaging in issues in the importance of education in this debate and grammar analysis. Thus, if I'm winning the straight card, you vote on the RBI because it would not mean my efforts in this debate were entirely pointless in the context of education. That means if I win the straight argument, I win the round. She conceded that argument, which is an offensive reason to vote for the RBI. So go to the straight argument. Extend the straight argument. Education is not priority. Fairness doesn't matter. Where all we walk away with is education. Specifically, you have to be able to learn how to do things in the future, which means that out of debate, maybe you walk away with the trophy, but that doesn't actually matter. The most important skill is education, which means you extend that. Additionally, you extend my definition, which specifically talks about how SCOTUS rules that any is specific or preferred because the context sheet makes a logical definition, but specifically you extend my argument where context is better because we're talking about legal topic. You extend the Fintel evidence that any is used in specific instances, which means that I'm allowed to spec a certain type of speech. Also, you extend my arguments on the limits which you have conceded. Topic education controls the internal link. She concedes that topic education is better served under my interpretation. Which means I mean education better, which is the reason to prefer AF. I went on the RBI debate. Additionally, she doesn't do enough weighing on the prior evidence. She just says it's not concrete, but the prior is specifically examining the relations of power, which is the oppressed will just be able to stay in power.
It's where you stand. Say anyone near Santa Monica. I'm not gonna try to give you your hotel.
I just honestly don't know.
What is my schedule?
All right, everyone. Congratulations. It is a 3-0 for the negative from Immaculate. Okay, I'll go first. I thought there were a couple of important technical drops, or at least arguments that were mishandled in the 2AR on the RBI debate. So I don't understand your answer to the C subpoint under number 1, that fairness and education are a priori burdens. You just have to be fair. Otherwise, debaters would, if you won by being fair, then you could just read a fair act and say you win, and that's nonsense. And then the 2AR I have from you, yes, these are the voters in the 1NC T-shirt. I didn't understand how that answered the argument. And then in the response to the impact about logic, you just say, people read Baudrillard, so logic doesn't matter. That's not the best. I don't know that I care a ton about logic, and I'm not really sure if it is illogical to grant an RVI. I think RVIs are silly, but I don't know if it's illogical. So that has some impact. I think the better impacts from the neg are the Chill's legitimate theory incentivizes more abuse. I also do not understand the 2AR response to those. What I have written is, I gave you links to substance, but you chose not to. And then something about conceding. You're conceding substance now? I don't understand how this answers the. Maybe it's my bad, but I just did not get it. The biggest argument from the neg, which was weird, I never heard this before, was the rebuttal efficiency offense. RVIs are bad because you collapse unnecessarily, so it's better to teach you to allocate your time better if you don't get an RVI. And then in the 2AR you say, well, I'm not being lazy, there's just nothing else I can go for. But that begs the question of the additional 2AR argument, which is that, well, you could get better at going for both of the things. You have not proven that it is impossible to win T and the case debate. You have asserted that it is. There's just no possible way, but there's no real empirical evidence for that claim that it is impossible for you to win on the rest of the debate. I think you'd have to do more work to prove that to me. And then I think there are answers to time skew that go dropped. I can vote on the critique after that. I don't think I have anything else to say. Oh, I guess, okay, well, I will say one thing. There's a 2AR move to talk about education and say education outweighs. I don't think the straight was impacted as an RVI argument. I guess it's a weighing argument for why fairness shouldn't matter. But I think most of those 2AR arguments can be impacted in terms of education. Even if it's not explicit, like, there will be lots of abuse. Yeah, that seems like a fairness term, but like, you know, abusive acts, non-topical affirmatives seem uneducational. Yeah, I don't think that this gets you a whole lot in the 2AR. Let me think. Is there anything else? Nope, that's it.
I agree with her. Basically, with that being that Tom Bob said, but like I also think that she's just kind of right. Like I think the crux of this debate was just like you were not efficient in the way and like because allocated more time or way less time on T, and that would like put you in a way better place strategically. And also, the one thing that I was gonna add was I don't think that you having a topical app that is educational is an offensive reason for why the RVI would be educational. So like that even if you win that like the RVI or that education matters, there's still not an offensive reason why it would be good to vote on the RVI for an education impact. If that makes sense.
I agree with both those things.
Yeah, so I agree. I'm less inclined to give this like fairness and education as an a priori thing because I think it's just basically the same as like the kind of the same as like the viewpoint, but whatever. Yeah, agree with Bob. Agree with
Matt.
Okay, agree with Matt. I also think it's kind of interesting that you read a straight card to justify like the RVI because I'm like 100% sure that straight would have just like been heavily opposed to it personally as a person. And I also don't like understand like this. It validates our education argument either. It just doesn't really make that much sense to me as it's explained. I think it's also interesting that you go for like fairness is secondary to education, but one of your like primary thrusts into the RVI justification is a fairness impact, which is the time skew argument. And I think in order for you to win some of your education impacts, you have to sort of win that time skew as a thing. But I don't think you have a proper answer to the 2AR argument, which is just like most of that abuse is self-imposed via an inefficient rebuttal that is actually net benefit to their interpretation because her interpretation forces you to get better at rebuttals, which I agree with. I never heard that one before. I think it's like sort of just falls under the hard debate is good debate, teaches they have to be better. But this specific instance I thought was like an interesting justification. Other than that, yeah, I agree with what they have to say.
I